Okay, does an ARD meeting, and an ARD, that's what they call IEP meetings in Texas and some other states. Okay, so does an ARD need to happen when a parent requests in writing for an amendment in the IEP to put certain services on hold, meaning counseling, speech, things of that nature? Yes and no. There are some things, depending on the comfortability of your particular school system, there are some things that are allowed to occur through with outside of the IEP team by mutual decision. And that's just notated like that. Most of these things are procedural in nature. That may be considered one of them. But it's sort of up to the school system on whether they think that they need to dot the I's and cross the T's in order to ensure that they're following the process correctly and completely. Okay, so it is sort of, yeah, you can do it, and no, it just sort of depends on your school district. Now, in this particular case, you got to be very careful that the school isn't interpreting your request to suspend or delay the provision of some of these services. You've got to have a good reason, number one, as a parent. And number two, you got to be careful that what you're not asking for is you're not revoking consent. You're not revoking consent for those services because there's a difference between the two. Now, if a school's sitting there going, well, the only way we're going to be able to do it is if you fill out this revocation, that's not what you're asking for. You're asking for a temporary suspension of those services for this reason. And if that's the case, then you also need to make it clear that you are not going to hold the school responsible with regards to FAPE as it relates to that particular service, counseling, speech language, whatever it may be, because you got to remember it's the school system that has 100% of the duty to provide your child a free, appropriate public education. And so if you're coming in there as a parent, very valid reasons, let's say, and say temporarily, I would like to put that service on ice, which we do all the time in some of our cases, especially if what we're dealing with is behavior issues, and the behavior issues for the child are escalated to the point where there's no way that the child is going to be available or participatory with regards to speech language, OT, things like that. And in reality, very well could escalate or make the behavior situation worse. So what do? We know the child requires OT, requires speech language in order to receive a FAPE, but at that particular time, it is not beneficial. Data supports that it's not beneficial. And so therefore, what the team needs to do is concentrate on trying to plateau and reduce the behavior issues in order to introduce the related services that the child has been missing. All right. Just force feeding the child services is not beneficial. And many schools will sit there and say, well, it's written in the IEP, we've got to provide it. Guys, if the child is not conditioned or in tune to provide those services, and they are engaging in behaviors or escalated behaviors during these sessions, then something has to be rethought, because that's not going to improve without some kind of intervention from a behavior expert, like a board certified behavior analyst, that will go in, assess the situation, and look at the functions of the behavior in order to reduce the behavior to increase skill acquisition. And at that point, you can reintroduce these things. I use that as an example. Don't know if that's the situation here, but you need a good reason. And you need to be careful that you're not signing a revocation. You're not saying that your child doesn't need these services, period. What you're saying is temporarily let's hit the pause button because we need to focus on X, Y, and Z, or this is another situation that needs to be handled and take priority over that. And then we can revisit the reintroduction of those services at a later date. You see how that's a different discussion. So you got to make it very clear what you're asking for and use the word temporary. And you also need to make it very clear to the district that you understand that they hold 100% of the duty to provide a FAPE. I would recommend that the school district provide you a prior written notice that contains that language in there, that per parent request, and the district acknowledging the parent request. What that does is it safeguards the district, it safeguards you. You're able to maintain a relationship of trust by having that discussion and having that mutual decision for the benefit of the child.